Let's get to the merits of it. One of the reasons this is so divisive, Alberta doesn't like it, Saskatchewan doesn't like it, and others don't like it, not only because they say law-abiding firearms are getting targeted, but violent crime has gone up, and I've just looked at the stats, more than 30% since 2015. We know that. Largely crime is from illegal handguns. I know there's a handgun ban, but the resources and the time on this is the wrong thing. You got the wrong answer to the problem. The problem is illegal guns, and this is not the wrong thing, and you're essentially criminalizing legal firearms owners who aren't part of the violent crime problem. Government overreach. Look, Alberta is pushing back hard against the federal government's proposed firearms buyback program, saying they will not support using the RCMP to confiscate banned weapons.
This is politically motivated confiscation, pure and simple. One that will do nothing to make Alberta a safer place or to reduce the criminal misuse of firearms.
Alberta also says it's seeking to intervene in 6 ongoing judicial review applications to challenge the constitutionality of the federal firearms prohibition legislation. By the way, Saskatchewan has also said they will not authorize the use of provincial money to fund the buyback program either. So how is the government responding to Alberta's pushback, and when can Canadians expect to get full details? I want to read you what Alberta's Solicitor General and Justice Minister said about this. He said, Alberta has rejected your request for provincial resources for their firearms buyback, he writes, or he calls it a confiscation plan. Alberta is exercising authorities that we have as a province to identify the confiscation program as an activity that is not appropriate for the RCMP, and we will not tolerate taking officers off the street in order to confiscate the property of law-abiding firearms owners.
He's wrong about all of that, and let's take a step back. Assault-style rifles were designed for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to kill people, and they have in Canada. It's a political stunt. He knows full well that the regulatory powers when it relates to firearms falls squarely within the exclusive jurisdiction of the federal government.
Let's just get to the matter of law, and then we can get to the substance of the policy in a minute. Just on a matter of law, he's saying that they will challenge it, and they have various ways to do it. It's within their right to do that, isn't it? You think they're going to lose, but he's not going behind the law to do it. He has every right to do this. By the way, as is Saskatchewan.
So Alberta brought a reference question over 20 years ago, and the Supreme Court of Canada held very firmly and has reaffirmed on a number of occasions that when it comes to matters to regulating firearms, that it falls within the jurisdiction of the federal government to do so.
Legally obliged to use provincial funds for it?
Well, we have an agreement, and one of the things that the agreement says is that when it relates to the RCMP, that the RCMP fall within the jurisdiction, the exclusive jurisdiction of the federal government.
It's different than the law. I mean, that's your view, but that's obviously not his view. But here's what else he said, and I want your comment again. He said, quote, Alberta has been informally advised that the commanding officer of Alberta's RCMP does not support the use of provincial resources to administer the federal government's confiscation program. If this is the case, neither the province nor Alberta's RCMP want police resources taken off the street in order to confiscate firearms. What do you make of this comment that Alberta has been informally advised that the commanding officer of Alberta's RCMP does not support the use of provincial resources? Like, what does that tell you? Does that amount, in your view, to political interference with the independence of the RCMP?
Well, first and foremost, applying federal laws, whether it relates to firearms or whether it relates to any offense under the criminal code, is not an a la carte menu. You don't get to opt out and tell the RCMP which laws they're going to enforce or not. That actually undermines public safety. And secondly, I would say that's a question you should be putting to the Alberta Solicitor General, who does not speak for the RCMP commanding unit, because, as you know, Evan, it is up to the police to determine who should be investigated and how offenses are to be charged. But you don't get to choose which federal laws under the Criminal Code and under the Firearms Act you apply and which you don't.
Does it concern you that the Solicitor General of Alberta is saying that the province is being informally advised about the views of the commanding officer of the RCMP and making policy about that? Does that concern you?
It does, and he should not be insinuating or attributing any kind of opting out on the part of the RCMP. So I would be putting that question to the Alberta Solicitor General. It's counterproductive, and most importantly, it undermines the fundamental objective which we are set upon, which is to rid our communities of assault-style rifles once and for all. We owe it to the families of the victims with whom I have met to make sure this never happens again.
Saskatchewan does not support and will not authorize the use of provincially funded resources for any process connected to the federal government's proposed buyback program. Can provinces just withhold funding, in your view? Is that in their jurisdiction to say, your program, you fund it, we ain't funding it?
Well, look, and the federal government will be there to work with provincial and territorial partners when it comes to addressing public safety priorities. And
okay, let's get to the merits of it. One of the reasons this is so divisive, Alberta doesn't like it, Saskatchewan doesn't like it, and others don't like it, not only because they say law-abiding firearms are getting targeted, but violent crime has gone up, and I've just looked at the stats, more than 30% since 2015. We know that. Largely crime is from illegal handguns. I know there's a handgun ban, but the resources and the time on this is the wrong thing. You got the wrong answer to the problem. The problem is illegal guns, and this is not the wrong thing, and you're essentially criminalizing legal firearms owners who aren't part of the violent crime problem. What do you say to that?
Well, a couple of things. First, the fact that gun crime and violent crime has gone up is an argument against the status quo, which is precisely what Alberta seems to be arguing for, and frankly, which the federal Conservatives have argued for, which would be to
it's the type
repeal.
Of guns. It's the handguns that are causing
I'm going to come to that, but I wanted to complete the thought, which is that, and it's precisely what the federal Conservatives have proposed to do, which is to repeal a ban of assault rifles, which we think is wrong precisely because of the devastating consequences that have been visited upon communities. But I would also say that Bill C-21, which I introduced last spring, which we're going to work with all parliamentarians to pass, includes a national handgun freeze because handguns are the #1 type of gun used in homicides. It will introduce a red flag law protocol to help reduce domestic violence in connection with the presence of guns. And it will also provide higher maximum sentences for organized criminals who would try to terrorize our communities with illegal guns. We need to pass that law. We also need to invest at the border to stop illegal smuggling.
Well, you've had 7 years to do it. They're saying you haven't done enough of that. I know there's a couple $100 million, but it's a drop in the bucket.
Well, first of all, it's more than that. It's $321 million to reinforce our borders since last year, and we made a record number of seizures of illegal firearms at the border, which we're going to continue to do. And the real trap and the real flaw...
But if it was translating into lower violent crime stats, it might be good, but it's not. Violent crime's gone up. From last year to this year, it's gone up over... In the last 7 years, it's gone up dramatically.
Which is why